I'm thinking that as long as Aprilia is able to continue making this engine for their motorcycles, we'll probably see some iterative improvements on the Tuareg, maybe even a new generation of Tuareg, a second gen Tuareg, and I think that would be pretty cool. I am very happy with what this bike is, kind of how it comes off the showroom floor, and what its foundation is for being turned into whatever it is you want it to be. That being said, I do think there are a handful of quality of life improvements that they could make for this thing, whether it be a newer model year or a generational kind of overhaul facelift type thing. And I'm going to share a handful of them. I will say again, I'm very happy with the bike. I don't know that I'd choose another adventure bike on the market over this. But that being said, I do still think there are just a handful of changes they could make that would make it a little bit more likable and a little bit more ready to go off the showroom floor. I'm going to be sticking to things that are realistic for them to change. I'm not going to suggest that they come with beefier tires or that they come with a skid plate or more performance or anything like that, really. Just really simple stuff that is unlikely to drive up the cost and is unlikely to put any potential buyers off. Just things that are hopefully improvements only, and that enhance the likelihood of this bike succeeding in the long run. I'm going to come over there, grab the camera, and just kind of do close-ups of all the stuff I want to share. Okay, first up is this low fender here. I've had issues with low fenders. A lot of people who off-road with their adventure bikes have issues with low fenders, especially if you live in an area that has high clay mud, which I absolutely do. It can cake up on your knobs, go in here and jam up the tire, which if you're in a low traction environment, it really doesn't take much to lock up the front wheel and kind of cause you to slide out, which is really unpleasant. A lot of bikes do come with high fenders, so I'm not sure if it's some sort of regulation thing or not. And myself, I have loosened these mounting bolts here on both sides and tried to pull it back as far as I could and then retighten them. You can maybe see that they're not perfectly centered, and I maybe gained an extra millimeter of clearance out of that, and I don't know that will make a difference, but I have been victim to mud clogging up my front wheel and causing the wheel to slide out and the bike to go down, and just seems like something they could easily fix. I don't know that I'd want them to go directly to a high fender. I know some people prefer the look of a low fender. I don't know that I'd notice a performance difference in terms of like wind pulling my wheel left and right, but something I think they could and should do, and maybe some other bikes on the market do this, but they have the two mounting points here, and they've got the two mounting points here, and it's kind of mirrored on the other side. I think where these bolts go in, they could just add a third mounting point here, so people who want a higher fender for mud or general off-road can take these mounting bolts out, pull the fender up an inch or so, and remount it. It seems like a really cheap solution and something that would be very easy for them to do, and something that wouldn't deter any buyers of, oh, I don't want the high fender, or I don't like that. You could kind of have a choice, and it doesn't seem like it'd be too much work to engineer a solution for that, or drive the cost up, or drive the weight up of the Tuareg. Along the same lines there, I'm going to go ahead and say the same thing for the windscreen. I don't really have a suggestion for how they go about it, but the buffeting on this has not been great for me. Maybe if I were a little bit shorter, maybe if I were a little bit taller, maybe it would be fine. But a lot of people are adding these Puig wind deflectors, or just no-name ones on Amazon because they're a tenth of the cost. But maybe some sort of tool-free latch and slide system. I don't personally want to see them adding some sort of electronic controls and all the components to raise and lower this thing with electronics. I just rather not the extra weight or the extra cost, just some way to get different heights out of this thing for long highway trips and for off-roading would be pretty sweet. Before I go any further, I want to just highlight that the obvious things that are personal preference that people might want, like upgraded tires or a better skid plate from the factory, I'm not including that stuff because it doesn't make sense for a bike like this to come from the factory that way. People who don't want the extra weight will be deterred by it, and it will increase the base cost of the bike. And then things like tires are personal preference, and I also think that they have an easier time passing regulations if they have a more street-oriented tire. Next up, I have a couple of convenience upgrades that I think are really cheap and really simple, but would make the bike just slightly more appealing and make basic use and ownership of it more convenient. First up, I think it makes sense for this bike to have hand adjustable suspension modification for compression, rebound, and things like that. You can adjust the rear sag without any tools, which is pretty cool. And you know, if I throw luggage on the back or something like that, I can just make a quick adjustment there. And while it's not majorly inconvenient to take out a screwdriver and tweak your settings for the terrain you're about to be on, or before you're on a long road ride versus a long chunky off-road ride, it would just be cool to reach down with your thumb or get off the bike and make the adjustment without having to take any tools out of your bag. I really am not trying to complain about the way it is. This is the fact that we have fully adjustable and great suspension is awesome, and adjusting it is a minor inconvenience. I'm only including this because I think it would be a very cheap and easy upgrade to make to future Tuareg iterations. Next up, totally not important, just another minor convenience upgrade. There's no oil window on this, and I believe like the RS660 as well, which shares you know, a differently tuned engine. And I think having an oil window would be really great, especially for a bike that gets abused like an off-roaded adventure bike. As it stands now, you've got to unscrew the little cap there and do an oil check, kind of like a car. And all my previous motorcycles have had an oil window where you kind of get it up to temperature. You tilt the bike up, you look at the oil, and you can see that it's still clean and healthy and not contaminated, and also that the levels are accurate. And finally, a tech upgrade. I originally mounted my phone, or an old phone, up here and used that for GPS and off-road navigation. I did not like how much it blocked my visibility, and it was just inconvenient to work with. Aprilia does sell a module you can connect to the bike, and then you get Bluetooth connectivity out of your phone. It can get basic navigation and other stuff. I just think in 2024, it can't add that much cost, weight, or anything like that to just natively support phone Bluetooth connections and then have those same advantages for basic navigation to get to your destinations. I think it would be even cooler to have something like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and the features that come with that. But if that would add a lot of cost or just a lot of inconvenience, whatever it may be, just native Bluetooth connectivity would be pretty sweet. And while I have a lot of other stuff I'd like to see them add to future versions of the Tuareg or minor changes, I think that list is really basic, really cheap stuff that would kind of upgrade an already phenomenal machine. My take is that this thing is one of the best, if not the best, factory off-road capable middleweight adventure bike on the market. There is good competition for the thing, but Aprilia did an absolutely awesome job for just kind of giving people who want capable adventure bikes what they want. And I do want to see them succeed with this bike. It does seem like a lot of people are unhappy with it. A lot of people don't trust the reliability of it. And plenty of people have had detrimental issues with their Tuaregs, and it's really unfortunate. But me personally, I do want to see them succeed and improve this thing year after year and have it turn into a better bike over and over again. And that is my list of simple, cheap, kind of foolproof upgrades they can make to future versions of the Tuareg. I think it would make a lot of sense to add a bunch of that stuff. I don't know that any of the changes I recommend for this thing would put any buyers off. I don't know that Aprilia would have to spend a ton on research and development to make those changes, but I think they make sense for mild improvements to an already great machine. Something I didn't include on the list, and I'll come over there and show you now, is another common failure point, but this is just something that Aprilia should fix immediately. This isn't like, oh guys, for the new one, we made the bike work right. But gasket leaks like this here seem very common. I'm quite certain that's oil coming out of there. I am working with the dealer I bought the bike from, who's working with the Piaggio group to get that addressed, and it seems like they're going to fix that under warranty. But I think this thing's called a stator plug, is leaking actually quite a bit, and debris builds up on there, and I cleaned it off for a while and it would just come back, and now I sort of just leave it so when I take it to the dealer they can see that I'm not making it up. Outside of that, I'd like to get a review for the Tuareg together. This year has not gone how I expected. Bike damage, personal injuries, we've moved across the state. It's been more chaotic of a year than it was supposed to be, and a review of this thing was next on my list, but it's going to take a bit to throw that together, and I want to do it a good bit of justice because I want my review of the Tuareg to actually have a good bit of effort into it and be relatively comprehensive in terms of my ownership experience and what I really think about the bike and how it's been able to accomplish the tasks I got it for. But yeah, that being said, life is still a bit chaotic. I'm still getting back together. It's a little uncomfortable sitting on the bike. I had my leg crushed, but I'm getting back to it. But yeah, all of that being said, I don't know when I'll get another video out. But I wanted to get something out, and this is the first weekend in quite a while I've been able to actually sit on the bike and walk and all that. So I wanted to get this one out there since I spent a lot of time reflecting on how happy I am with the bike, and that kind of led me to start thinking about what would make me even happier with it. So hopefully you agree with what I'm thinking there. If you have some different ideas in mind or any kind of issues with the things I'd like to see on the bike, just let me know. I think it's cool to talk about this kind of stuff and think about what the future of adventure bikes might look like.